advise the president on the legality of telling government agencies that they don't have to spend money that was already appropriated by Congress?
White House counsel's office believes that this is within the president's power to do it, and therefore he's doing it.
Okay, so they agree with lawmakers who say that they don't have the power to freeze this funding.
Again, I would point you to the language in the memo that clearly states this is within the law.
How is the administration deciding which laws to follow and which ones to ignore?
That the president was within his executive authority to do that. He is the executive of the executive or to fire anyone within the executive branch that he wishes to.
The prosecutors who were fired, that they will succeed.
We will win in court.
And
yes.
Did he personally direct this, given they worked on the classified documents investigation?
Karoline Leavitt walked into the interview ready for a debate, but she had no idea she was about to witness a complete career meltdown. What started as a heated political discussion quickly spiraled out of control. A veteran TV host known for his aggressive style crossed the line in a way no one could ignore. Within minutes, the internet erupted. Clips went viral, sponsors pulled out, and the network had no choice but to take action. Was this accountability finally catching up with the media, or just another case of cancel culture? Let's break down how one interview ended a major liberal TV host's career.
Final interview, which White House official made the decision to bar the AP reporter from the Oval Office tonight?
Well, first of all, let me just set the record straight. It is a privilege to cover this White House. It's a privilege to be, and nobody has the right to go into the Oval Office and ask the President of the United States questions. And there are hundreds of outlets on this campus, many of you in this room who don't have the privilege of being part of that pool every single day to decide who gets to go into the Oval Office. And you all have credentials to be here, including the Associated Press, who is in this briefing.
Victorian nature is the argument, because the reason that the AP was barred, which they said was because they're retaliating against reporters who don't use the language that you guys believe reporters should use. And how does that align with the First Amendment commitment that you raised? Gulf of America, they're using Gulf of Mexico in line with their standards. And so the question here is this setting a precedent that this White House will?
Very upfront in my briefing on day one that if we feel that there are lies being pushed by outlets in this room, the coast of Louisiana is called the Gulf of America. And I'm not sure why news outlets don't want to call it that, but that is a geographical identification name server. And
a commitment by President Trump, he said that he and President Putin agreed to visit each other's respective nations. That President Trump has that President Putin must do before he goes and meets with him, withdrawing.
Not that I'm aware of. That doesn't mean they don't exist, but I was just talking with the president in our national security editions, but if they exist, I'm happy to provide those.
And on
and about Ukraine's NATO membership, and he appointed several individuals to negotiate on his behalf.
Paul Danning was known for pushing buttons, but this time he pushed too far. As the debate heated up, his frustration was impossible to hide. He leaned forward, eyes locked on Karoline Leavitt, and spat out a statement that changed everything. "People like you are the reason this country is backsliding." The studio went silent. This wasn't just about politics anymore. This was personal. Karoline didn't flinch. Instead, she met his glare with a calm, deliberate question. "Would you like to clarify what you mean by your people?" For a brief moment, Paul hesitated. A split second, but enough for the entire room to feel the shift. Producers exchanged nervous glances. Crew members stiffened. The tension was thick. Everyone knew he had just walked into dangerous territory. Realizing his mistake, Paul scrambled to recover. His voice came too fast, too rehearsed. "I meant conservatives." But it was too late. The damage was already done. Karoline didn't need to twist his words. His panic spoke for itself. But instead of owning up to his blunder, Paul made things worse. He scoffed, dismissing her reaction. "Oh, come on, Karoline, don't play the victim." And then came the career-ending moment. Maybe if conservatives spent less time playing the victim and more time actually contributing something to society, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The second those words left his mouth, the fallout was inevitable.
That again, time and time again.
And then regarding the confirmation of Tulsi Gabbard, there was one Republican who voted against the nomination. Similarly, how does the administration view Senator McConnell? Can he be a partner in the president's legislative agenda? Are you disappointed that he voted against Pete Hegseth to be the defense secretary?
I think we're greatly disappointed in any Republican who chooses to vote against the president's exceptionally qualified cabinet nominees, and not a single Democrat swayed from voting against President Biden's nominees. They turned out to be atrocious at their jobs, leaving America.
Does Elon Musk have power of the presidency?
Absolutely not.
Right.
That's a ridiculous question.
Elon Musk hurling attacks. calling him President Musk. Most recent, Musk's impeachment, saying that he somehow usurped the power of the presidency.
Thoroughly ridiculous. Elon Musk addressed this in the Oval Office as well. Elon Musk is serving at the pleasure of the president, directly from the President of the United States. We saw them do it in the first term. We're not going to let them do it in the second term. This is a unified team. Failed attempt from the media and from Democrats to try to sow division in this White House, who is working at the pleasure of the president to do what's right for the American people.
A veteran journalist had just insulted half the country on live television, and the internet was already watching. The internet wasted no time tearing into Paul Danning's meltdown. Within minutes, clips of the exchange flooded Twitter and TikTok, racking up millions of views. The most viral snippet? His smug, dismissive remark? Maybe if conservatives spent less time playing the victim and more time actually contributing something to society. Outrage erupted instantly. Hashtags like #HatFirePaul Danning and Media Bias Exposed shot to the top of trending lists. Conservative commentators called it the perfect example of mainstream media's arrogance, while even some liberal viewers admitted he had crossed the line. It wasn't just social media users piling on, sponsors were watching too. By midday, 3 major advertisers had announced they were suspending their partnerships with the Morning Current. By evening, that number had climbed to 8. Damage control was proving impossible. Every attempt to spin the situation only fueled the backlash. Full-length clips of the interview didn't make Paul look any better. If anything, they made his comments seem even worse. Political analysts weighed in, with some calling his comments a mask-off moment that exposed how media elites really think. Others debated whether this was a case of real accountability or just another example of cancel culture running wild.
Of Donald Trump, I'm stunned and amazed by his new White House spokesman. She's actually the youngest ever in that job. Boy, was she giving it to the Trump haters in her first White House briefing. No, I couldn't do that at 27. No nonsense, straight to the point, courage, detail.
One thing was clear. This wasn't just another controversial TV moment. It was turning into a full-scale media firestorm, and Paul Danning was at the center of it. Inside NBS News, chaos erupted. Executives scrambled to contain the fallout as the backlash intensified. Viewers bombarded the network with emails and calls, demanding Paul Danning's resignation. But it wasn't just the audience. They were losing money fast. Sponsors were pulling funding, and by the hour, more advertisers distanced themselves from the Morning Current. The controversy didn't die down overnight, it only got worse. By morning, the pressure on NBS News was at a breaking point. Karoline Leavitt appeared on another talk show where the inevitable question was asked, "Do you think Paul Danning should be fired?" She didn't gloat, she didn't attack. Instead, she gave a measured response. "I think people in positions of influence should be held accountable for their words." That was all it took. The internet took it as confirmation that Paul's fate was sealed. By 9 a.m., NBS News made its final decision. Effective immediately, Paul Danning is no longer affiliated with NBS News. Just like that, his career was over. The media world exploded. Some called it justice, proof that media elites couldn't insult half the country and expect no consequences. Others called it a dangerous precedent, a man losing his job over one heated moment. Paul had spent decades building his career, but in less than 24 hours, one viral moment had erased it all. And the debate over what it meant was just beginning. Paul Danning's firing split the country in two. For one side, this was long overdue accountability. It proved that mainstream media figures could no longer look down on conservatives and expect to get away with it. Paul's arrogance had finally caught up with him, and his firing was a reckoning for biased journalism. For the other side, this was cancel culture at its worst. A journalist had been fired over one bad moment, a single exchange that had been blown out of proportion. If a veteran TV host could be taken down so quickly, who was next? Conservative media ran with the story, hailing Karoline Leavitt as the woman who exposed liberal media bias. Fox News, The Daily Wire, and Newsmax covered the fallout non-stop. Meanwhile, left-leaning commentators distanced themselves from Paul. Some agreed he had crossed the line, but many worried about what his firing represented. In media circles, a bigger question loomed. Was this a one-time scandal or a warning shot for the entire industry? The debate wasn't just about Paul anymore. It was about the future of free speech, accountability, and media power. And the battle over what his firing really meant was just getting started. Days after his firing, Paul Danning finally spoke out. In a pre-recorded video, he looked exhausted but defiant. "I was fired because I spoke the truth. The media doesn't want truth, they want compliance. If you step out of line, they erase you." His statement ignited even more debate. Was Paul a victim of corporate censorship, Or was he simply facing the consequences of his own arrogance? The video racked up millions of views, with supporters rallying behind him and demanding boycotts of NBS News. Critics, on the other hand, insisted he had no one to blame but himself. Meanwhile, Karoline Leavitt stayed completely silent, refusing to engage in the controversy. She didn't need to. The internet was already handling it for her. Paul Danning's career is over, but the debate is just beginning. Was this real accountability for biased media, or just another example of cancel culture silencing opposing voices? Did Karoline Leavitt expose the truth, or was this an overreaction to a heated moment? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more updates on the biggest controversies, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications.